get started, if that's all right. My name is Rudi Silver, and I'm the Director of Innovation at GEMS Dubai American Academy. And I'm very happy to be here with you this afternoon, so thanks very much for making the time to come. This is not a SEND talk as such, by the way, just to sort of make that clear if you want to leave now. But we will be touching on SEND issues, but it's really just about creating a whole culture of innovation across a school, including, of course, all students, including SEND students. Okay, so the first thing I thought we'd think about is how do we even think about innovation in schools? And I think often, from my experience of going to different schools and working at them, we often frame innovation in a way around two things. One is technology, and the other one is connected with that is maker days and maker spaces and innovation challenges and all these things. And that's fine. I mean, we do them ourselves, you know, all the time. We do things like this all the time. But I get the feeling that it's not enough to create a true culture of innovation. And I think when I started my role at our school, I really wanted to get away from this idea that innovation's only open to to the few students who enter a robotics competition, or it's only available on one day every 6 months or something like that, or one space in the school. So I really wanted to get away from that and start to think about how we can build a culture of innovation which permeates actually everything we do every day, everywhere. So we've been trying to work as hard as we can in the last sort of 6 months or so to do that. So here I'm basically here to share a few of our ideas with you. We're not perfect, we're on a journey, it takes time, it's never going to be over. We know all that, but we've found that so far in our sort of building of this culture, we've hit upon certain things which we think have got resonance with the students, with the staff, with the wider community. So we're going to talk a little bit about those today. First of all, I've got two questions. One is, we always talk about innovation in schools, but what about innovation for schools? And that's connected with this idea of having maker days and innovation challenges. What about the rest of the days? If they're just learning and teaching the same way that we've always done it, that's not enough, is it? That doesn't make any sense. If we're talking about innovation, we have to change schools themselves and think about how we can do that. And the second one is connected to that is, what about a wider framing of what innovation is in itself? Obviously, we know that innovation isn't just about technology, it's about mindsets, it's about lots of different things. So what can we do about that? I've got a little challenge for you, which I'll just kick off with today, and it's this. I'm mentoring a history teacher at the moment, quite a few teachers actually, but this particular one was interesting. And I wanted him to try something new in his classes, but he was quite hesitant, and he was quite afraid because he had an assessment to do. And he said, I'm nervous about trying this right now because what about if we don't do the assessment? What will the other teachers think? What will the parents think, etc.? So I said to him, okay, what is your assessment? And he said, basically, he gives the kids a template of a history course book, and they have to basically create their own chapters of a history course book following this template. That's what he gives them every year, the same thing. So I thought, how can I help this guy to bring some kind of innovative thinking to this practice? So before I tell you what I suggested, can you just take a minute with your partner and think about what would you suggest if you were mentoring this teacher? How could he make that task innovative in some way? I'll give you a minute. So students just have to design a unit of a history course book, right? And then put them all together into one book. How could we change that? Okay, any ideas? Anybody want to share an idea? What would you have said if you were me talking to this teacher? This is a real story. It happened about a month ago. What would you have said? Nice. Yeah, that would have changed it. I'm pretty sure the kids would have got more into it for a start. Yeah, so they could have used a different sort of media, which then would have required the development of other skills like design, etc. as well. Yeah. Nice. I'll just repeat that. So a blog post, first-person account of somebody in that sort of historical period. Nice. Okay, so you bring in other narrative skills as well, also including empathy and all kinds of other things are starting to come into the task, as well as the basic task of just recreating a course book chapter. Anything else? Design an app, how would it work? Nice, so rather than just having a sort of printout, the old school way. Okay, so we could design an app. Anything else? Yes. Nice, all right, so we could do a whole drama thing around the unit as well, right? Really bring it to life and in a cross-curricular way as well, which would have been very cool. Actually, your suggestions are way more interesting than the one I actually gave him. I knew he was anxious, and obviously time was pressing as well because he had this assessment coming up, and I just said to him, okay, why don't you just do the same task, exactly the same task, but make the instructions the opposite of what they were. In other words, instead of following in a template, tell the students not to follow the template. That was it. That's all I gave him. So suddenly, you've gone from a situation where the students are basically just going to recreate the same thing they've always recreated to a situation where you've challenged them to come up with something totally different. What do you think the students' reaction would be to each other's work? Based on that, what would be more interesting, reading or seeing what other students have produced, which is going to be pretty much exactly the same as what you've produced, or having that curiosity of wondering what the other students in the class are going to make of that task? Yeah, exactly, and it did. It did, but in a good way, competitive in a good way, yeah. Because suddenly, the challenge is completely different. It looks the same, but it's completely different. And that's really what I want to talk about today, is just how can we create innovative situations across anything in the school, just getting people to really challenging people to really think and not just recreate something that's been given to them, which is too much of what happens in schools, as we know. So I'll give you a few examples of the way we're trying to see innovation through a wider lens at DAA. First of all, we see innovation as a mindset. It's not tied to a particular technology. It's not tied to a particular time. Even though at DAA we have the sort of ethos that we want our students to be future fluent, that doesn't mean we're fixated on this idea of futurism or new all the time. As we said, people said that this morning in the introductions, values as well that are timeless also come into the work that we're trying to do around innovation. So we think of innovation not as making, but as making better. So rather than having a maker space, what about if the whole school was a make better space? For the school, for the local community, and for the world. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is we had some middle school students, grade 6, I believe, who used Minecraft, the computer game, to create a virtual brain to simulate basically brain surgery and get us to understand brain diseases in young adolescents. And they've created this whole world to educate other people about these traumatic things happening. And they're now moving on to a heart version of the same thing. So we've got young people here, very young people, really thinking about how they can use their thinking to have an impact on the world around them. Lots of examples of this across our school. For example, students recently instigated a Meatless Mondays initiative. Obviously, when they're doing their sort of environmental units, they're really thinking about what impact they can have. So they've stopped eating meat on Mondays. Might sound like a small thing, but it came from them. And for me, that's innovation, and certainly in the context of our school, it's something which adds value to our daily life. Lots of other examples. We've got something called solution fluency. It's part of our thinking at the moment in the school. It's a really sort of heavy focus for us, which is basically problem solving, critical thinking, etc. And we try to pretty much bring it into every unit and everything that we do with kids, really getting them to think about not just ideas, but implementation. What can you actually do? Even the way we talk sometimes in schools, I think, is problematic. We talk about design thinking. What about design doing? What about actually doing something? And that's what we're trying to sort of inculcate in our mindsets at the school. On that note, actually, because I want to make this something that you really think about as well and how we can all do this across all of our schools. Again, I'll just give you a minute maybe just to talk to a partner to think about, can you think of one thing that would be better at your school? Get it to speak in Spanish and also label it, etc., with all the Spanish words. So they had loads and loads of language production, and in the end they had something to show for it as well, which was their little robots. And I've personally never seen kids as into a foreign language as I did during that project. Another one for literacy, high school, one of our high school English teachers. I wanted to show the video, but I had a few technical issues, so I didn't. Just in the middle there, Tommy, one of our high school literacy teachers, he did a project on poetry and robotics where the kids they were studying World War I poems, and they had to create basically a robotic representation of the poem they chose. And it was amazing. It sounded completely wacky at the beginning, and I'll be honest, as a literature graduate, I wasn't sure quite how they were going to pull this off, but boy, did they. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. We've got a lot of video stuff on this, which I'll put on my Twitter and on the GAA Innovate Twitter, so you can check it out after the session. What else? Loads of other projects. We had a really nice one at the top there. Middle school teacher teaches social studies, and obviously now with the new national agenda, she was trying to bring in UAE social studies as much as she could. And she wanted to teach the students about the heritage of Islam within the context of a unit she was teaching. And again, the same thing, the students had to use robotics kits to choose a moment in Islamic heritage, an invention or some powerful influence that Islamic culture has had on the world, and create a robotic representation of it. And that was just been amazing. We presented at KHDA, and then we got invited to the Dubai Police Headquarters just yesterday to present that project. Bit weird going to the police station, I'll be honest with you, but it was successful. So just ways in which we're looking at putting innovation across the whole unit of study, not just one day. That lasted, I think, that one was maybe a 6-week unit, a 4-week unit. Every day the kids are thinking like this. They're doing design thinking, prototyping, evaluation, all these things that many of us now see are really, really valuable in schools. Other examples? We got the kids to redesign our libraries, and we're working on this project at the moment because obviously it has to be within budgetary constraints, but they've come up with absolutely unbelievable designs, and we're going from top to bottom, from primary school all the way up to high school, and the kids have literally redesigned our libraries. Name everything, absolutely everything. Layouts, use of technology, and we're going to give the libraries their name as well, at least we're going to say sort of designed by, and the names of the students. So they're going to have that ownership over those spaces for real. Other ones, we're using virtual reality at the moment quite a lot, but not in a piecemeal way. It's not like, oh, virtual reality is really cool, let's put the headset on and let's do, let's have adventures, but in a meaningful way. So, for example, grade 5s, you can see the picture at the top. There's an article which I will also share on Twitter after this, that we've written about this project where kids are basically using VR to chart human migration patterns across the centuries. And they are so into this, it's unbelievable. So they're using the technology to really immerse themselves in the history of humankind, and it's a powerful project as well. Again, a 6 or 7 week project, so every day they're thinking about these things. It's not a one-off. If we value innovation, why don't we value it enough to put it in the curriculum? Question, right? If the things we value, we do every day. And it's weird, isn't it? Even this morning, one of the teachers emailed me and she said, oh yeah, I'm a visual learner. And I said, everybody's a visual learner, aren't they? But we don't say, I'm a text learner, or I'm a word learner. But again, that belies the fact as well that we don't value visuals in the same way that we value words. So it's things to think about, isn't it? The things we value in schools, we have to put them in everything. Otherwise, we don't really value them. That's what I think. And the last one, so innovation in everything, and also innovation for everyone. This one's interesting, and very close to my heart personally, because I'm also teaching on this module. We had, I'm sure you guys have had this scenario plenty of times as well, where you've got kids with learning difficulties in your schools, and the school's not catering for them, honestly. And we've got some of these kids too, where we struggle. We struggle to integrate them into mainstream classes. They're disengaged, their confidence is often low, and then we patronise them, really. We support them, we are trying to support them, but often we're just kind of papering over the cracks. So we had these boys, 3 boys that I'm working with at the moment, and they're really struggling with literacy and maths. And so we had a rethink. We thought, well, what can we do? If we really want to be a school that talks about innovation, that means it's for everyone. I don't want to be involved in a system which talks about innovation and then some kids are not involved and they're just struggling as they've always struggled. And it was really interesting the other day because one of the mothers came in to talk to me and she said, thank you. This is the first time in 10 years of schooling, roughly, that this kid's had, that anybody's even really listened to him. Or really tried to change the system according to him, rather than just trying to sort of meld him into the system, which is really different. So anyway, what we're doing, we've designed a sort of bespoke program for these boys. We're running it as a pilot at the moment for about 6 weeks initially. And we're teaching them literacy through creative multimedia. That's my bit. Oh. So they're doing a website with me, 3 kids. The topic's robots and drones, because they love all that stuff. So we've chosen a topic they're purposely into, which is cool, because that's what the school's kind of into as well. So it worked out well. But it could have been any topic, football, anything, whatever. And basically what we're going to do together, we've already started, is we're creating a multimedia website, and they are now going to be, for the next 6 weeks, our school journalists, basically. So they're going to go around, they're going to make videos, vox pops, and formal interviews. They're going to interview the superintendent, other students outside the school, all kinds of stuff we've got planned. They're going to make videos, they're going to write articles, they're going to do audio slideshows, they're going to make infographics, and then when we're done, we're going to share it with the whole school. It's going to go on our official website, and hopefully we'll go beyond our borders as well. These kids are overjoyed with this prospect. It's really interesting. One of the kids, he's usually quite quiet. He's so proud of this, and everybody thought he's not going to want to share his work with the world, right? The minute I said, you know, are you going to be happy to share your work with the school community? He's all over it. We've got these massive screens in the school, and he wants his work to be there, and that was, for me, very striking, that suddenly you've got this kid who doesn't usually say much. He's actually got the courage to go and do something like that, whereas a lot of other students wouldn't even have that courage. So that's interesting. We're also teaching not only literacy but maths through robotics. So we've designed a program where they're basically, you can see a picture just there, they're using different technologies like Lego Mindstorms to learn maths. We've got a few sort of maths art applications as well, where they're learning about geometry, angles, all these different things through making these cool kind of art things, and then we're going to 3D print them and make an installation, that sort of stuff. So something real. So what we've done is we've worked with the literacy and maths teachers to map out the exact curriculum, so that every week, you know, we make sure that, also to validate the program in the eyes of the parents, of course, and it's a trial, so to make sure that we are sort of supporting them with their core skills. And so far, it's been like an unbelievable journey, honestly, I have to say that. Even though it's just started, and I hope I can report that back to you in a few weeks' time, but it's really shown us, I think, that not only for SEND kids, but for all kids, there's power here. There's power in doing things differently. Another examples of innovation for everyone. Connected to that, I think it's all about different access points. You know, I'm always thinking, we've got all these examples, and I can give you all these examples on a slide, but what am I really trying to say? And we always talk a lot, but we don't say much. That's the problem with talking about schools. There's a lot of systems, it's complex. How can we kind of summarize those things? And for me, it's about different access points in the end. Who cares if they do a robotics project or something else in the end? But it's another way, another opportunity for those kids to get it, to get something. You know, if they learn maths through a course book or another way, cool. If they learn it through a robotics project, cool as well. You know, in fact, even better in many ways, because then they develop their social skills and other technological skills at the same time. So anyway, just a few examples from here of how we're trying to do that. This, I didn't show her picture for, you know, for sort of obvious reasons, but we had a kindergarten kid who came with us to KHDA, and she was showing people how to use Cubeto. She was learning about maths and literacy also through that, and that was really cool, cute as hell. But she could articulate what she was doing as well. It wasn't just, oh, it's so cool, there's a kindergarten kid doing something cool. There was real meaning to it. It was interesting. We're trying our best to give kids, we've got Andy at the top there, he's one of our grade 5 kids, absolute high flyer in maths. He's doing grade 12 maths. That's how high he is in maths. Like, he's off the charts. He could teach our high school kids maths. That's how good he is. I don't think they'd be too happy about that, because he's in grade 5. But point is, we're having to give him new stuff. And the great thing about, this is where the technology can be good, it's giving us the opportunity to give him the opportunities. Yeah? So we've got a lot of robotic stuff at the moment. He's working with our robotics manager to program these robots, which then will be used in other classes, etc. So he's really on board, like he's super engaged. And we're giving him challenges that don't exist in normal curricula. That's the point. He's off the charts with that stuff. So we have to give him something new. We have to create new challenges for him. We've started a Models of Excellence project on the side there, which was inspired by Ron Berger's work. And here we're getting the best work from our students and displaying it, but in a non-traditional way. Because we want them to see what went into that work, and it could be anything. One of our students, Nicole, you can't really see it properly, but she's a singer, and she wrote a song which has now been on Virgin Radio, and she's gonna be performing at what's the festival called? DX something? Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, Redfest. So she's going to be performing there now. So it just happened by chance. We gave her an opportunity to perform. Somebody heard about it. Somebody else heard about it, and it's just grown from there. And we want to foreground her excellence. So what we've done is, on our Models of Excellence space, is not just show Nicole's work. Everybody knows about that already. But we've created a little video documentary by her to explain how she got there, which is the design thinking process. Like, all the sacrifices she made, all the drafting, all the iterations she made to get to that final piece, because that's what we want the kids to learn. Not all of our kids are going to be singers, but all of our kids can be good at something if they follow those kinds of values and you know, applications of their work ethic. We had Celine, who's a grade 3 kid. You can just about see the picture there. She was nominated. There was a UNICEF competition with cartoons. They had to create a cartoon for climate change, and she got in the top 20 in the world. And again, we're doing the same thing. It's not just about the prize. What did Celine do to make her work so good? And so we've got a little video of her kind of explaining where she's showing her first sketches and all the sort of processing work behind it to give our students the understanding that this takes time. But we want to value everything, whether it's a song, whether it's a cartoon, anything. A couple of other examples, we're trying our best to give kids opportunities for volunteering. So we had some kids at the Dubai Film Festival who went over and they worked as a media team, basically interviewing as many people as they could. It's cool because if you ask to interview someone, they'll say no, but if a kid asks to interview them, they'll say yes. Unless they're a really bad person, in which case we don't want to interview them anyway, right? So lots of sort of ways that we're doing that. Another one we had, the one in the middle, this was interesting. Because in our school, it's quite a new building, and some rooms were really cold, and some rooms were really hot. So you have this situation where everybody's complaining, nobody's happy. Some teachers are too cold, some teachers are too hot, and students as well. So we basically use this Internet of Things kit, which is quite an inexpensive one. And the kids basically created these, they used sensors to collect the data from different rooms, and then they wrote into a report and presented it to SLT as well, to get the changes made. And I thought, what a cool idea. And this was connected, the teacher was fantastic. They connected it to what they were studying. It was environmental science. So it was fully mapped onto the curriculum as well. And they just got so much out of it, because it was real. That's why. So again, innovation for everyone. It doesn't have to be to do with technology, but of course some technologies can facilitate because they provide more opportunities, right? What else? Last sort of kind of chapter, if you like, the presentation. I thought this kind of sums up what we're trying to do at the school. And as I said, we're not there yet. It's still, you know, it's still a young journey for us. But what we believe in is this: innovation is from the roots up for the leaves to shine. In other words, my vision for this, and it's not because I'm lazy, I want the kids to run basically everything in our school. That sounds a bit crazy, but that's kind of what we're working towards, or as much as possible, yeah? So a few examples of what we're doing at the moment. We've got a student innovation team, which I know lots of schools have got that, but we've got one in each class. So just in the lower school, which is primary and elementary, we've got 48. We've got a team of 48. And each one of these kids is basically influencing things happening in their own classroom. So it's a much quicker way to get to their classrooms and make real change happen. And you know those resistant teachers who don't want to try new things? Get the kids to ask them. Perfect. Cut the middleman. Right? So the way we're working with these kids, we're still training them and stuff, and they're collecting these badges to become digital trainers and so on and so forth. But our end goal with this, which we're approaching quite soon, is we want these kids to basically work with their teachers. So they work with the innovation team, which is my team, They choose something they'd like to try in their class, technology or otherwise, and then they work with their teachers to decide when and where in the curriculum they're going to embed it. And then they make it happen. So kids really taking control of what's happening in their classrooms. And they have to be able to articulate it. We don't accept just saying, I want to use a robot because it's cool. It's got to be connected to learning goals and, you know, the things that obviously the school's going to value as well. So that's one example. We've got kids writing on articles for our parental newsletter. What else? We've got kids evaluating, just here, this is an example of kids evaluating our technology. Kids are quite honest. I'm sure you guys agree with that, right? So we do sometimes technology showcases in the library, parent events, which is really cool actually. Because often the parents can be quite sceptical about the kinds of changes the school's trying to make. And that's, you know, that's absolutely, you know, reasonable and rational, especially when the school hasn't yet articulated maybe the mission that it's on. So the kids are often better spokespeople for the school than we are. And so we're trying to get them. We ran an event just back in January where the kids basically had to choose an app each on their iPads, and they had to prepare a little presentation with it or a little activity and then present it to the parents at different workstations. And it was awesome. They were brilliant. We trained them in media skills. So we trained them in sort of welcoming the parents, you know, eliciting questions, answering questions diplomatically, etc. And they really wanted those skills because they had a reason to learn them. I think that was a kind of a nice project as well. We've got kids involved in staff training. That's the picture right there at the top, which is conspicuously showing my lack of hair, but that's all right. But yeah, that was Ryan, one of our 6th graders, and he was involved in official staff training. And that's what we're trying to do. These kind of kids who are really pushing the boundaries or really want some challenges, get them in. It doesn't have to be separated, staff training and student training. Get them in. Get them to work for us. Why not? And the last example here at the bottom is we've got an innovation website, and we have a student editor on that who I've just appointed. So he'll be working with me to curate content for the innovation website. So students really integral to the way we communicate and promote innovation across our school and the wider community as well. That's important, because they want to have a voice. You know, why are we talking about the things they do? They should be talking about them. So that's another way that, you know, perhaps if you're interested, you guys can kind of get the students involved in the innovation conversations. So just to wrap up then, I thought I'd leave a little bit of time just for any questions or maybe comments on what you guys are doing in your schools. So the question I tried to tackle was, how can we create an inclusive and universal culture of innovation in our schools? And I think we sort of can break it down to these 5 things. For me, it was a wider framing. We need to frame innovation in more interesting ways. It's not just technology for a start. And also, you know what? It's not just new either. I think we need to get away from this simplistic idea that anything new is innovation. No, it's not. You know, people were innovating hundreds of years ago. And some of those ideas are not in place yet. So why don't we keep working on them? Right? There's plenty of stuff in education, as I'm sure we all agree as teachers and senior leadership, that hasn't been done yet, even though it was thought about 50 years ago and 100 years ago. So as far as I'm concerned, that's still innovation. Why are we not doing it? The second point is maybe getting away from this idea of just making. Like, yeah, sure, you can make something, but who cares? So what? Unless you're making something better for someone, then what's the point? And again, kids are great at this. I took a bunch of kids into the 3D printing studio the other day, and I was like, what do you want to make? You know, thinking they're going to say key rings or something like that. One kid was like, I want to make prosthetic limbs for people in society to have better lives. I was like, wow, that's cool. Really cool. Because already we're getting them to think in this way, you know? And I think it's a natural way for them to think as well. I think kids are naturally empathetic, but maybe we don't provide them with enough opportunities in schools to express that, you know? The third one is innovation infused in everything. So again, try to think about innovation as not something bitty or piecemeal or separate. You know, if we value it, it has to be inside what we do. We should start with the things we value the most, right? So it really got me thinking about that one. Innovation meaning everyone should be involved in the conversation. If you want to be a truly innovative environment, then every single person in that building should be able to express themselves and add value to what they do and what we do as a community. And finally, step aside for the innovators. You know, sometimes the best thing we can do for kids is just get out of the way. And I've been thinking that more and more, I have to say that. And this theme in my mind keeps resonating. And I don't know if I made this up or if somebody else did. Probably somebody else did and I stole it. But I just keep thinking, what kids learn shouldn't be limited to what we know. You know, like when we were kids, you know, I have to think that when I was in a learning environment as a student, I pretty much only learned what the teacher knew and could teach me. But now we don't have those limitations anymore. So why are we still doing it? It doesn't make sense. I'm having kids, these sixth graders, they know way more about robotics than I do. They can do it technically. Where I can help is helping them with the management of their ideas, you know, those sorts of things, the teacher skills, you know. So it's really made me think, maybe as teachers then we need to be, rather than thinking of ourselves as sort of experts in content, maybe we just need to be experts in learning. Maybe that's what's really important. So anyway, I'll leave you with that one. That's the contacts. If you want to get in touch at any point, please do. I'll put some stuff up on Twitter later on today after this. Thank you. Anybody have any questions, comments, share anything? So you said that, so that technology can reduce the importance of teachers?
Yeah, if the focus is on technology,
yeah.
the teacher feels her importance has come down. So there is inner feeling not to encourage.
Okay, so the question was a really fantastic one actually, was is technology threatening, right? And how can we get beyond that idea as teachers that the technology threatens us? And it takes me back to, I was training some teachers in Amsterdam a few years back, and one of the teachers was a little bit cynical, you know, about technology and stuff, and he said, but isn't it going to take over? He was being a little facetious. Isn't it going to take over, you know, take over from teaching? And I said, to be honest, if you don't embrace the technology, then it will take over. In other words, only the teachers who want to stay stuck in the past will be replaced by the future. That's what I think personally. And it's, you know, I mean, in the end, for me, the technology makes teaching more human. And this is me speaking as a teacher. It revolutionized the way I started teaching because suddenly the kids could do things that they couldn't do before. We didn't have the possibilities. You know, so instead of just saying write an essay, we could radically reshape that task but learn the same skills. So actually, they had more possibilities, which means they need a teacher more to guide them more. You know, in the end, just sit and write an essay. Do you need a teacher more for that, or do you need a teacher more for going to make a film? If you think about it, or to do a robotics project. I think you need a teacher more for the second one, definitely. It's much more complex. You know, and then you can write an essay about it, or whatever. So I think we have to get away from that argument that it's technology versus the teacher. I think that's really simplistic nowadays. I think if we see the best uses of technology, we see that they're very human experiences, where the teacher's warmth, the teacher's encouragement, you know, the teacher's guidance is fundamental to success. So, is that enough of an answer? Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Or sharings? No? Great. Well, feel free to get in touch at any point, and yeah, be good to talk about these things further. So thank you very much.